This is PTV World. I am Syed Shabahat Ali, and you are watching Fault Lines. Americans' foreign policy under President Donald Trump remained under a lot of criticism throughout his tenure. He was criticized to open unnecessary fronts with countries and allies like China. The coordination with European Union also got affected, and the relationship with Russia was also a point of criticism for all of his opposition. When President Joe Biden took the office in January 2021, the expectation bar was very high. But have Joe Biden been able to revisit the policy? Have United States made any gain when it comes to the front of international diplomacy? Watch the package prepared by our team before I bring my first guest to the program.
Rejoining multilateral organizations and reinvigorating alliances to donating vaccines. The Biden administration has been the antithesis of its predecessor. Biden quickly rejoined the Paris Agreement and World Health Organization, as well as underlined the United States' commitment to NATO, hence brought transatlantic partnership closer together. In other areas, such as strategic competition with China, there appears to be little daylight between the two. The Biden administration has accepted that the concept of strategic competition with China, embraced by the Trump administration, remains the defining framework for the relationship. This effort is best summarized by the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken's statement that the United States' approach towards Beijing aims to be competitive when it should be, collaborative when it can be, and adversarial when it must be. In terms of Russia, Biden has pursued a familiar dual-track policy with Russia, engaging where it is in the United States' interest and pushing back against adversarial Russian actions. One of his first foreign policy actions when he took office was to renew the new Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty for 5 years, the only remaining treaty regulating the nuclear arsenals of the world's two nuclear superpowers, which was set to expire in February 2021. Lastly, in advancing along the course set in South Asia by his recent predecessors, but bringing greater competence and purpose, U.S. President Joe Biden is accelerating the geopolitical change in the subcontinent and reorienting the terms of engagement between Washington and the region. The clear focus on coping with the China challenge has helped Biden administration make several early and consequential decisions. Biden has also carried on with his predecessor's policy of the U.S. troops withdrawal in Afghanistan and the re-clubbing of AFPAC policy together. How will the Biden administration impact Pakistan and largely the South Asian region in the future?
Ladies and gentlemen, during my visit to United States, I had the privilege and honor of meeting American Senator Christopher J. Van Hollen at his office in the U.S. Senate. Senator Van Hollen is an American senator since 2017 from Maryland. Very few people know that he was born in Karachi. He's the son of an American diplomat, and he has a great background or a great understanding of the South Asian affairs. I interviewed him with regards to United States foreign policy, with regards to Russia, China, and then most importantly, Afghanistan and Pakistan. Watch the interview before I bring the other guest to the program. Senator, welcome to my program.
It's great to be with you.
Senator, the first thing that comes to our mind when we look at the United States and as a global leader, we see increasing discomfort between the United States and China. This now is turning as a Cold War and is having its impact on the economy of the world. Do you see any chances of things diluting from there, or you see this trend to continue for years to come?
So first of all, there are areas where it's in the interests of the United States and China and Pakistan to cooperate. For example, in combating climate change, which can have very devastating impacts to all of our countries and, of course, to the world. There are other areas where we also should be cooperating with China. For example, when it comes to global pandemics, we have been very concerned that China has not been more transparent about everything that happened with the outbreak of COVID-19. But clearly, pandemics are global in nature, and we all have an interest in working together to defeat them. But we have been very concerned about China's using its centralized economic power to try to export its authoritarian model, a model that cracks down on freedom of the press, a model that does not support democracy. And we've seen them use that against countries like Australia. When Australia spoke up against China's actions in Hong Kong, China threatened Australia economically. So there's no doubt that China uses this economic leverage and some of its what we call debt diplomacy to try to get other countries to follow their lead.
So what do you mean by all that is that this trend is going to continue for quite some time, because both the countries are clearly not de-escalating in terms of this diplomatic gulf that is developing between the two.
Well, again, we want to look for areas of cooperation and mutual interest, but the United States will continue to stand up against what we see are aggressive Chinese actions. So, for example, in Hong Kong, there's no doubt that they violated the agreement that they signed years ago that would allow Hong Kong autonomy. They just tore that up. So the United States is very worried about the actions they're taking that are anti-democratic, that don't respect people's freedoms and freedom of the press. I'm not looking for a Cold War with China. But clearly you have, in many cases, an adversarial relationship. And that is why when President Biden went to meet with NATO partners recently, a coordinated response to China was very much part of the agenda.
Senator, we have seen a major breakthrough when the President of the United States and President of Russia met recently. There was a warm handshake. There was a very warm statement that followed the meeting. So do you see this as a major development? Because Russia and China have an increasingly improving degree of cooperation with each other. And my second question is, does that frighten or does that concern the United States' superiority in the region or its interest in the region?
No, look, I think you're going to find relationships of convenience that emerge, but when it comes to the meeting between President Biden and Putin, I have a little bit different interpretation of the meeting. I think it was important that President Biden meet face-to-face with Putin to talk about what the United States interests are and what we would not tolerate. We will not tolerate Russian interference in our elections. Russia should not become the territory from which cyber attacks can be launched against U.S. companies and U.S. infrastructure. We've been very clear that Russia's activities in eastern Ukraine, violate Ukrainian sovereignty and international law. So I think it was really important that President Biden say face-to-face to Vladimir Putin that that's the case. After all, the former president, President Trump, when he had his summit meeting in Helsinki with Vladimir Putin, they were both before the world, and President Trump said, I agree with President Putin, or I believe him when he says they didn't interfere in our election, even though our own intelligence agencies unanimously said they did. So I think it was important that President Biden have that meeting, but there are also areas of mutual cooperation because of mutual interests. So strategic nuclear arms control. I was pleased to see President Biden extend the New START agreement, something that former President Trump did not do. That's in our interest, and obviously Russia thinks it's in theirs. So in all these relationships, there are areas where you're going to have mutual interests, and at the same time, it's going to be important to make it clear where interests diverge.
Senator, Pakistan has played a very important role in Afghan peace process so far, and going forward, we are still, doing a lot to make sure that the United States not only withdraws peacefully, but Afghans settle down in a peaceful manner. How do you see the role of Pakistan in this entire effort?
I think Pakistan has played an important and a constructive role, and we're grateful for Pakistan's efforts to ensure that U.S. forces can leave Afghanistan in an orderly and safe manner. And we appreciate that coordination, that cooperation. And throughout this period, Pakistan can play a very important role in the future of Afghanistan. In fact, it can play a pivotal role. There's a lot of uncertainty, of course, about what will happen next in Afghanistan after U.S. forces leave. But it's not in Pakistan's interest. It's not in America's interest. It's really not in anybody's interest to see chaos and violence erupt in Afghanistan. And obviously, both because of geography and history, Pakistan can play a role. And when I talk to Ambassador Khalilzad, he has told me that it's his belief that Pakistan has played a constructive role in these negotiations that took place in Doha, and very much hope that Pakistan will continue to play a constructive role. And of course, it's in everybody's interest that there be more economic opportunity. On the one hand, you could have chaos and violence. On the other hand, it's possible you could have a real opportunity, economic opportunity, a peace dividend. And so the United States needs to do everything it can to try to encourage a peace dividend. And I've introduced legislation to help with that process. But Pakistan will play a vital role.
Senator, you're very appreciative, and I'm very thankful for your appreciation for the role that Pakistan has played. But the sentiment in Pakistan is a bit different. Pakistan believes that we have always been asked to do more, do more. In fact, the word do more is now associated with US policy with Pakistan. And recently, our foreign minister, Shah Mahmood Qureshi, also said that Pakistan is doing whatever Pakistan can when it comes to settle down between, to convince Taliban to settle it down wisely. But if they do not, the onus would not be on Pakistan, because Pakistan has already done a lot more than it possibly could. So do you think that the expectations associated with Pakistan by the United States are realistic in nature?
Well, there's a constant debate in the United States as to the extent to which Pakistan can influence events in Afghanistan. I do think Pakistan can play a constructive role. Pakistan has helped to bring the Taliban to the table, the negotiating table in Doha. And I think the extent to which Pakistan is perceived to be playing a positive role as the United States leaves will influence certainly the Biden administration's next steps in the relationship with Pakistan. I have encouraged the Biden administration to really engage with the government of Pakistan on these questions, because Pakistan can play an important role. People can overstate, of course, the influence that Pakistan can have in Afghanistan. I don't think Pakistan can control what happens in Afghanistan. That's going to be up to all the different groups and factions and parties and peoples in Afghanistan. But Pakistan does have influence for historical reasons and geographical reasons. And so I think this is an important moment. This is why I've been encouraging the Biden administration to work with us to pass legislation to create what we call Reconstruction Opportunity Zones. These would be areas in Afghanistan and along the Afghan-Pakistan border, including areas like KP, including areas within 100 miles of the border in Baluchistan, areas that had once been dominated by the Pakistani Taliban. And in my view, these would be areas where products made, especially textiles, would have duty-free access to U.S. markets. That would be an incentive to everybody on both sides of the border, the Pakistan-Afghan border, to cooperate for a better economic future for their peoples.
Thank you very much, Senator, for speaking with us, and it's such a pleasure to have you in our program.
It's great to be with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This was Senator J. Van Hollen exclusively speaking with us on PTV World. If I do a synopsis of the major things that he has brought on table within this conversation is the issues that the United States have with Russia, particularly with regards to the cyber attacks that United States believe have an origin from the Russian individuals or organizations. Several issues that he pointed out with China, and he has extended appreciations for Pakistan's commendable role when it comes to Afghanistan. So to take a response from Russia regarding the issues that the senator have highlighted, I have famous journalist based in Moscow, Leonid Sevin, who has generously accepted to be in my program. Mr. Sevin, welcome to the program.
Hello, Syed.
Sevin, you just heard what the American Senator Christopher Van Hollen said regarding the cyber attacks. What do you think is the nature of these attacks, and why all the agencies of United States unanimously are pointing out fingers towards Russia?
First of all, any expert of cybersecurity tell you that it's very possible to conduct cyber attacks from any country. There is ability for proxy servers, and second, there is international community of hackers, and there is proof that FBI, for example, and CIA also engaged hackers to organize some kind of gray operations against different countries. It's fact. Second, there is no any proof that Russia organized cyber attacks against American critical infrastructure. There are some facts that there was attacks inside of United States. For example, a recent attack on a pipeline. And what is very important that American officials, for example, Paul Nakasone, officially confirmed that Cyber Command already conducted operations against Russia. So there is proof that United States organized cyber attacks against Russia, but from other side, there is no proof that Russia organized similar attacks against United States. And of course, United States have much more tools to organize offensive cyber attacks and to organize the defensive cyber deals inside of United States. And I think it's kind of political umbrella, mostly political to do some kind of diplomatical pressure. And there is not only about cyber activity, we have different other fields for diplomatic pressure, for example, about what happens in Ukraine, on the ex-Soviet space, and Belarus Republic, and so on. So first, we need to analyze in details what happens in reality and what American politicians just to talk. And there is kind of inertia. Because
Sevin, thank you for bringing this up. You just mentioned the issue of Ukraine, and this is what the senator also said. He believes that the issue of Ukraine was a major reason why both the presidents, the President of the United States and the President of Russia, met. What are the concerns of the United States with regards to Ukraine, and what is the point of view of Russia on that?
First of all, United States have no moral right to talk about Ukraine and what Russia do there. United States organized a coup in 2014 in Ukraine. Then Russia followed just in the frame of responsibility to protect doctrine that also have Western origin, and United Nations also supported this doctrine. and Russia needs to protect Russian people in Crimea and east part of Ukraine at first. And second, United States also violates sovereignty of different countries. One example is just Cuba. More than 70 years, the United States violates sovereignty of Cuba because occupied Guantanamo Bay and still the American forces, and at the same time imposed inhuman blockade against the Cuba. So we, when talk about democracy, about human rights, about kind of sovereignty, we just need to remember these very harmful actions of United States, Cuba.
Seven, amid all this conversation that we had, amid all these crises that the two countries have with each other, have anything changed after the meeting of the two presidents? And in addition to it, I would also want to ask, what do you believe at the moment is the trajectory of relationship between the United States and Russia?
Yes, we need these talks, we need negotiations, because United States and Russia are both powerful countries, and I am agreed with one point with Senator Van Hollen. It's about control of strategic arms, because Russia also interested in this area about global security, and of course Russia proposed many deals to United States, and also about to conduct joint investigation about cyber crimes and about cyber attacks. It was proposed from Moscow, not from Washington, and still we're waiting a response from American politicians and American experts. Yes, we need to talk, we need to meet, and both sides need to understand also intentions of counterpart. And I hope we will be open and fruitful in this kind of cooperation, and not to keep the stone behind the back.
Thank you very much, Leonard Savin, for being in my program. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll take a break and join back with the second segment of the program. Stay with us. Welcome back. And I have with me the official spokesman of Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Zahid Hafiz Chaudhry, in my program. Zahid sir, welcome to the program.
Ji, assalamu alaikum ji, thank you.
Walaikum salam, sir. So you just heard the statement by the American Senator Christopher Van Hollen, who we found very appreciative of Pakistan role. He also endorsed what Shah Mahmood Qureshi had categorically said, that Pakistan cannot control Taliban. He said the same thing. Do you think, is it an agreement of what Pakistan have been saying since day one?
No, absolutely. What Senator Chris Van Hollen has said, actually this is reiteration of the international community's position about Pakistan's role in the Afghan peace process. Senator Van Hollen has appreciated Pakistan's role in the Afghan peace process. And he has also said that any expectation that Pakistan can control things in Afghanistan is unfair. Now, what also Senator Van Hollen has said is that Pakistan has played a pivotal role in bringing Taliban to the negotiating table. And of course, Pakistan's role in the peace agreement between Taliban and the United States. Another important point that Senator Van Hollen has made is that it's Pakistan's role that has facilitated safe withdrawal of U.S. forces from Afghanistan. And more importantly, he has also mentioned that chaos in Afghanistan is not in Pakistan's interest. Now, this is precisely what we've also been saying. Pakistan is the only country that has consistently maintained that there is no military solution to the conflict in Afghanistan. And the only solution to the Afghan conflict is an inclusive, comprehensive, and a broad-based political settlement. And a settlement that is Afghan-led and Afghan-owned. Now, Senator Van Hollen has said exactly the same thing, that Pakistan has been working for peace in Afghanistan, and Pakistan's role in the Afghan peace process is important. But let me also share, Senator Van Hollen is also among those congressmen who've been supporting the idea of reconstruction opportunity zones in Pakistan to spur economic growth in areas bordering with Afghanistan. So we believe that it's a welcome statement by Senator Van Hollen. Yes.
Joseph, don't you think this is an out-of-box thinking, particularly when coming from United States, where instead of just pushing everyone with the stick, a saner voice has given a financial plan to create economic partnerships on both sides of the borders. What do you think of it?
No, precisely. This is what we've also been saying, that Pakistan wants to have comprehensive economic partnership with the United States. We have a lot of convergence of views with Afghanistan on a number of issues, particularly on the Afghan peace process. Pakistan and United States, we work very closely towards achieving peace in Afghanistan, and we will continue working with the United States. But this idea of reconstruction opportunity zones, this is absolutely a fantastic idea, because this will spur economic growth in the areas of Pakistan bordering with Afghanistan. This will also facilitate, enhance people-to-people, business-to-business exchanges between Pakistan and Afghanistan.
And lastly, Chaudhry, do you think that viewing Pakistan still, I mean, once the US forces are on the go from Afghanistan, but still viewing Pakistan's relationship with the United States with the perspective from the prison of Afghanistan, as the senator said, do you think is it good for Pakistan, or should the United States be taking Pakistan's relationship more holistically?
You know what we want is that to have a comprehensive, broad-based relationship with the United States. We want to enhance cooperation with the United States in all areas, particularly in the areas of trade and investment, economy, development, climate, and other issues of mutual interest. But then, yes, of course, Afghanistan is one area we have convergence of views with Afghanistan, where we share the same objective. And the objective of both Pakistan and the United States is peace in Afghanistan. We will continue working with the United States towards achieving that objective.
Thank you very much, Zahid Hafiz Chaudhry, for being in our program. Ladies and gentlemen, the last part of my program, I have Shakil Ahmed Rame from SDPI. He is a famous analyst of the Chinese affairs, keeps writing frequently about Chinese economy and Chinese political system as well. Rame sir, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
We are discussing a statement by Senator Chris Van Hollen, who was speaking exclusively to our program from Washington, D.C. And he said that with regards to the global pandemic, China has not played a very transparent role. How do you think China's role has been declared non-transparent, or has been viewed as being non-transparent by the U.S. government?
I think if we look at the data and the facts, maybe we will not find that those the argument or the comments as made by honorable senators, they will not be supporting that argument, because China allowed World Health Organization to conduct a study in the affected areas. And it was, I think, the step which was very transparent to invite a global institution to conduct an independent study. But now the Americans, they are asking China to conduct one more study and also doing some other things. But China is saying, okay, let's do it. But why not the China open its own labs? Especially they are talking about the, the four deck labs. They were talking about that. Why not the WHO team and other independent consultants also go there to check the probability? So if you talk about on the equal terms, I think on the neutral terms, if you can ask me as a neutral from the third country, definitely if you are asking one country to open these areas, if that country say, okay, we are ready to do that, let you open these areas, then you cannot say no, you cannot say no to that, because if you are just only pointing finger to one side and you are not looking at the other side, that is, I think, it would not be a neutral study, or not would be a justifiable, you can say, the demand. But definitely, if they are opening the for deck and they are also asking that the players should go there, definitely, if then China is not allowing, then we can say like that they are not transparent. But if they are not allowing themselves, how they can ask the China, how they can say that China is not transparent. One thing and second thing, in the beginning when the COVID-19 was there, so when they were saying, oh, they are not sharing like that, they are not doing this, they are putting restrictions. But after that, the whole world have to put the restrictions. Even some countries in the West, they went for the complete lockdown. So we have to analyze the facts and figure, not just try to just point a finger in the one direction.
And do you believe that this entire thing, the way it has spread from around the world, and the way China has been blamed for it by United States, is being used in a political context to further strangulate or to further make the relationship between United States and China a bit more adversarial? Or do you think it's just a lack of cooperation between the two governments that is responsible for all this blame game to happen?
Look, I will again talk about the facts and figures. I will not talk about, I will not give much time to the politics. Definitely politics is involved and deeply involved, and these statements are coming out of the politics, what the American side is trying to blame. For example, when the Mr. Pompeo, he was a foreign minister, he used a different terminology to malign China on the COVID-19. But the facts tell us the China was ready to cooperate. And look at the statistics, how much they have sent to China, to USA in the term of the mask, equipment, and also other suits and the gears and medical instruments which were needed in China to combat the COVID-19. If you look at that, it would be in the billions of masks and the other things they had been sent to China, to the USA. That is one type of the cooperation. But definitely, I think that both countries, as China has already said, that they are open to the joint investigation, so they can work together. But I should strongly believe it can only happen if we take politics out of it. If we try to deal the pandemic as a pandemic, if we just try to, if we have the intention to blame one country and another country, then I think that there is no hope for the much deeper cooperation.
And Ramesab, do you believe that the issue of Hong Kong will still remain to be the hotbed of conflict, or still remain to be a bone of contention, to be more precise, between United States and China?
Look, this is not a matter of the United States and the China. Look at that. Wherever China has an interest, they started to talk about the human rights and democracy and everything. And where they don't have interest, interest in the other direction, they never talk about these things. Look at the Palestine, what is happening there. So look at the Kashmir, what is happening there. The worst situation on the democracy or the human right is happening in the Kashmir and Palestine. But you will never see a single statement on that. Or either they will be supporting the Israel on these issues. So it gave me, it shows that they have some other motives. They are not about talking about the values or the democracy or other things, but they have other objectives. One thing and second thing, every country has a right to develop its own system of the democracy and the governance. For example, if the Western democracy we are talking about is a liberal democracy, which is based on the electoral system. If we talk about the Chinese system of democracy, it is called a being whole process democracy. They have entirely two different systems. Nobody can say like, my system is better than your system. If we give to the, you can say, if you give to the chance to this argument, that means tomorrow if some other system or some barbaric countries are capturing other parts of the world, they start to say that like that, oh, our system is better, we can use the force and you have to comply with us. So it should not be the case. I think the Hong Kong, let the Chinese, it's their internal matter. Let them deal with it. Other countries, they cannot dictate them what to do or what not to do.
And recently there have been an initiative. I don't see whether it has transformed. I don't know if it has transformed into a formal proposal or not. But the US president has met the heads of EU countries and said they should come up with an infrastructure proposal as mighty as BRI. Do you think United States has finally realized that China's economic partnership model is getting more popular, and these are high times for US to review its own strategy to maintain its influence on the smaller or the developing countries?
Look, there are two things which I just want to highlight here. Look, first, when after the World War second, so America emerged as a global power by building a partnership and giving and extending its hand for the economic cooperation and infrastructure building. So that makes USA a superpower. But when USA has left it, they become more interested in other things, then they started to diminish. So it's a good that the Americans is coming back to its own strategy, old strategy. One thing and second thing, we have to look at that for economic cooperation for what? Either it is for influence or for a partnership at an equal basis. If it is for influence, then there is a lesser chance that the USA and the Western country will be successful. If they are trying to build a partnership on the equal basis, as the West and the US always talk about the human rights and the human dignity and the equal partnership of every human and every country, then it will be a better strategy. But at this point of time, when we look at that, the G70 initiative of the $40 trillion, so they are trying to eliminate or exclude China from this initiative. I think then again it will be a strategic mistake as they made a mistake at the time of the Marshall Plan. They excluded USSR. The exclusion of the USSR led to the Cold War era. So Americans have and the Western countries, they should avoid this mistake at this point of the time. Because if we look at the global facts and figures about the economic investment and requirement investments in 56 countries, then leading 20 G20 countries and other countries. The requirement in the next, I think, till to the 2040, the requirement for an investment is $94 billion. So $40 billion is not enough for that. So they have to build a cooperation with other countries. So I believe if the USA and the Western countries come up with a plan, so which would be based on the partnership and equality, I think it will be a successful. And they should also include the China in this initiative.
And the Senator Van Hollen also said that China has used its economic leverage against Australia on the issue of Hong Kong. Tell us more about it.
So, because they're not using the leverage Australia on the issue of the Hong Kong, so they are having other irritants in their economic linkages and the trade linkages. As Australia also started to take part in the Quad, so which has been built against the China. So they are also putting some, you can say, some types of the restrictions on Chinese trade. Then definitely, and they look at that, what was happening to some Chinese citizens in Australia. I think that these are the main instruments which China had to retaliate because the Australians were unilaterally taking decisions which were impacting China, Chinese people, and their economic interests. So they have to take their, you can say that these steps to push forward that to stop Australia and look forward towards Australia to build more cooperation. But if somebody is saying that due to that Hong Kong, that I don't feel like that is due to Hong Kong.
And Ramesh Saab, lastly, the relationship between United States and China is still on a negative trajectory, at least apparently, the way we are looking at it. So how do you see or foresee the future of US-China relationship as the global situation is getting worse and worse, and while China is much better when it comes to the situation of COVID, don't you think that a better cooperation with China will help United States and European Union as well as the other countries to improve the situation of health indicators in context of COVID instead of increasing or building more walls? What do you think is the trajectory of relationship going to be in the future in context of COVID-19?
Look, COVID-19 is not the only challenge. I think the more big challenge is climate change. So climate change is threatening the very existence of the planet Earth. And you look at that, what has happened in the last 2 or 3 weeks, the floods in China, floods in Germany, and the floods in Pakistan, and other parts of the world. So climate change is becoming the bigger threat. And the COVID is definitely another threat. These both issues just suggest one thing: cooperate. Because neither the pandemic nor the climate change alone, no country can control it or combat it. It required the cooperation among all the countries. I think the two are China and the USA, they are the bigger power. And definitely USA is a superpower at this point of the time. So these both countries, if they cooperate, the world will be a better place to live. But I strongly believe, either they like or not, so they will have to cooperate in the future. Because the challenges are so big, they cannot combat the challenge unilaterally. One thing, and second thing, if you look at the European Union, they also need a new areas for the investment, because the rate of investment, return on the investment in the Europe and the Gulf countries has been decreased. In Asia and the China, the rate of return on the investment is higher. So they have to invest they have to invest in the China and the Asian country to just go for the better economic situation. So I say like that, out of nowhere, they have to cooperate. That would not be a choice in the future, it will be a compulsion. But it would be better if they start to work together right now so they can devise a better system for the cooperation in the future.
Ramesab, we just recently have seen a meeting between the Chinese foreign minister and the representative of Taliban delegation. And they must have exchanged ideas of development in Afghanistan. We are assuming that. I have not seen the formal press statement. Do you think that with the United States going out from there, China has high degree of interest in Afghanistan and doesn't want this to become once again the rose garden for the development or the production of the militants that can haunt other neighboring countries, including China?
Look, to meeting with the Taliban, I think that it was a very wise and required instrument, because definitely Taliban has a legitimacy to talk with the countries. If USA itself and NATO countries and allies, they were negotiating with the Taliban to have a deal to leave the Afghanistan, that means the other countries can also meet Taliban, because the USA and their allies themselves had a deal with the Taliban, not with the Afghanistan government. No, the Afghanistan government and Taliban are talking to each other to have a deal between themselves. And second thing, definitely, every country in the region, they are looking forward. So Afghanistan should be a stable region, because every country feels the pain of the Afghan people, because they have suffered for the last 4 decades. They suffered the pain of the war and the conflict, and there is a lesser economic opportunities, the livelihood opportunities. So China is trying to fill that gap so the people can have the livelihood and economic opportunities. So people move towards a peaceful and sustainable society.
Thank you very much, Shakil Rame, for being in my program. Ladies and gentlemen, the onus of peace in the world is on the superpowers. China and United States, without settling their mutual issues, will not help any country in developing a peaceful environment. There are growing challenges, as my last guest in the program said, including terrorism, climate change, and COVID-19 above all, which requires a rigorous degree of cooperation between these countries. What we have seen with our interview with the American Senator Christopher Van Hollen is that America's strategy is not going to change in short term for China. The relationship with Russia will also remain a bit turmoilic. But when it comes to Pakistan, Senator personally has appreciated Pakistan's role, which is an endorsement of Pakistan's point of view and Pakistan's support for Afghan peace process. We'll join you next week with another program. And until then, Allah Hafiz.